We in the media often talk about drinking from a fire hose, how there is so much news during this Trump presidency. And yesterday and today, perfect example. You've got the president meeting the president of China. You've got the Senate going nuclear over the Neil Gorsuch filibuster, which has now been vanquished. You've got President Trump trying to decide what to do about the situation in Syria, trying to revive the health care bill that failed, and on and on and on. But the one story that just seems to persist and permeate the media culture day after day in different permutations, I might say, is this investigation, so far not a very effective investigation, of all of these allegations: Trump, Russia, wiretapping, surveillance, and all that. So the latest news is that Devin Nunes, who I've talked to you about before, the House Intel chairman, stepping down or stepping aside, recusing himself from that investigation. And he put out a blistering statement blaming left-wing activist groups and saying that the charges that were being raised against him were completely political and completely false. But the truth is that he was politically clumsy, and he kind of did this to himself. I mean, here is a guy, a veteran congressman, who is supposed to be the head of a bipartisan investigation, and it looked at times, as this thing unfolded, like he was almost colluding with the Trump White House. There was that dramatic sequence of events where he secretly went to White House grounds, looked at classified material involving the investigation and allegations of improper surveillance by the Obama administration of Trump and or his aides. Went back to the White House the next day, made a great show of briefing President Trump, talked to the press, said he was very troubled. And then, of course, it turned out that he'd gotten this material from White House national security aides. So that, I think, put a cloud over the whole investigation. It was probably a smart move on the part of Nunes to step aside, to not be a distraction as this thing unfolded. At the same time, this other extraordinary subplot unfolding about Susan Rice, who, by the way, she went on MSNBC with Andrea Mitchell. She denied doing anything improper or political or leaking anything when it came to this question of unmasking or seeking the identities of Trump as a candidate, as president-elect, and his associates when they popped up on foreign intercepts. Except that 2 weeks earlier, in an interview with PBS's Judy Woodruff, Susan Rice said she didn't know anything about any of this. This is all news to her, when that obviously was not true. But in an interview with the New York Times, you had the President of the United States saying, without any evidence, and in a way that is very unusual when somebody is under congressional scrutiny, that he thinks Susan Rice may be guilty of a crime. I don't know if that's true. There's no evidence of that right now, but it is another swirling subplot. There are certainly legitimate questions to be raised about why Susan Rice, as Obama's national security advisor, was so interested in unmasking the names of these Americans who turned out to be probably Trump and his associates. What was her motivation? Did she leak anything? She denies that. Did she disseminate this throughout the government in order to perhaps increase the chances of it becoming public? So the whole thing is kind of a mess, and I would just say the bottom line is this. No evidence right now of any improper collusion between Trump, his associates, and Russia. No evidence for his original claim that the Obama administration tried to wiretap him. Some evidence about surveillance, but no bottom line about whether this was done improperly or for political reasons. So at the end of all of this investigation, and this is going to drag on for a while, it might be that there's a lot of smoke and not much fire. So those of us in the press need to be cautious and careful about assuming or presuming or implying or insinuating that there's anything terrible here. But at the same time, we've got to keep looking into it and kind of filter out the distractions from whatever the real story might be.